The Starlight Lounge presents An Evening with the Progressive Box.
I took a bit of a risk singing that song, but of course the one place I never take chances is the road, where Progressive Snapshot rewards your safe driving. A good driver plus Snapshot equals big discounts. And speaking of math, 1 + 1 = 2, little too late.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Snapshot not available in California, North Carolina, or from all agents.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot. Oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting show with Supernatural Girls Radio. I am your host, Patricia Baker, and I'm here with my co-host all the way from Tucson, Patricia Kirkman, PK. How are you tonight, PK?
I am so excited. I have waited for ages for Mark to be on the show with us, and I can't tell you how excited. I've been like a little kid all day. I can't wait for the show to start. He is marvelous. I just went to his show here in Tucson, and what can I say? He's great.
Well, thanks to you, we have him on the show with us tonight, and I can't wait to introduce him to everybody because he is a star beyond stars and extremely talented, comes from many generations of psychic mediums who are hugely talented. We are going to find out a lot tonight, aren't we?
Oh, not a doubt in my mind.
I cannot wait. But in the meantime, first we got to check in. A lot of craziness going on in the world as usual.
You got that right.
What else is new? What's happening with the numbers? What can we expect?
Well, this is the wrapping up time. This is the end of the month. So we're bridging the month we've been in and where we're going. So it deals with a lot of communication, but a lot of scattered energies. People are acting like little crazies running around. And part of what's going on today, this month, this day, and this year are identical. So whatever your personal stuff is, it's quadrupled. On top of that, the universe says it's all about me, my, and I want it happening this way. So you've got a lot of pull. It's like a rubber band people are pulling at. I'm waiting for that other end to be let go of and snap us clear back into reality.
Uh-oh. It doesn't sound like that part's going to be fun at all. So
Not really. But we have necessary.
Had some, yes, I guess, these pendulum swings, though, are wide and severe. So I think it's a real task for everybody to stay grounded, no matter what's happening around them. Take that deep breath and tune in. And now, we have had some interesting things happening, haven't we?
Yes, we certainly have.
You had a UFO show up right on the property. It was picked up by our trail cam. And I posted it on our Supernatural Girls Facebook page. So if you people want to see it, it's there for all to see.
Right.
And this is a real UFO. This is not photoshopped or anything. As I've said before, I can't even imagine how to do Photoshop. This just came right off the trail cam. So take a look at it and let us know what you think. We always love to hear from our listeners. And we've also had other stories posted. We had that amazing story about the little girl, Nora, and how she turned this older gentleman's life around after the death of his wife. And it's like these two were bonded right from the beginning. It has to be past life, I think. What do you think?
I would think so. I would definitely think so.
And they almost kind of looked alike in the videos and the pictures. There was something so similar about their souls. And it is such a heartwarming story. I want to urge all of you to go to our Facebook page and play that video. It originally aired on CBS News, and it was amazing and just beautiful to watch. And usually we're posting spooky things and all kinds of paranormal stuff that makes you think, but this makes you think too, but think with your heart. It's a very different kind of video for us.
The good stuff. We've got a lot of it out there. We just have to bring it in and post it.
We do. And so that's the beginning of that tonight. And so please take a look, give us a like and a follow on our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, sign up for our newsletter, The Fringe Files. That is at supernaturalgirls.com so that you can catch up on all the latest and greatest. But just keep visiting that Facebook page. We're going to be posting more and more things there. And we certainly have an eye on the skies, especially since we saw that last UFO. I mean, that was a total surprise that it showed up that way in the trail cam in a cloudless sky. There is no doubt of what it is. So we'd love to have you all go to the Facebook page and take a look and make a comment. Let us know what your thoughts are on it. Again, your thoughts and your feelings are very important to us. So go on over there and let us know, right? So tonight we have a very special guest. Thanks to you, PK.
Oh, thanks to him for being here with us. That's for sure.
I know. We're so excited who we have tonight. Now, this is a lengthy intro because he's so spectacular. His name is Mark Anthony, and he is called the Psychic Lawyer. I love that title. I love it, love it, don't you? It's great. He is a world-renowned fourth-generation science-based evidential psychic medium who communicates with spirits. He is featured regularly on major television shows such as The Doctor. In fact, I watched him on The Doctor today.
Yeah.
Yes, he was great. He's also, this is amazing, an Oxford-educated attorney, licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. In England, he studied mediumship at the prestigious Arthur Findlay College for the Advancement of Psychic Science. And again, he's a recurring guest on ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox Television as a psychic medium, paranormal expert, and legal analyst in high-profile murder cases. He's also an author. Is there anything this guy can't do, PK?
Not anything I can think of so far. I think he's covered it all, unless he's holding something back on us.
Yes, he's written two tremendous books. Never Letting Go, which is a major bestseller and is recommended by hospices and grief counselors worldwide, and his newest book, Evidence of Eternity, which is also a bestseller and the first book of this genre to be considered for a Pulitzer Prize. What an honor. My God, this is incredible. His life mission is to use his abilities to assist those suffering with grief caused by the loss of a loved one. And we're blessed to have him here with us tonight. Mark Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thank you. You guys are so sweet. It's really great being here. Thank you very much.
Oh, my God. Thank you for coming on to the show. You know, you are the epitome of everything we talk about, because on this show, Supernatural Girls, our tagline is where paranormal is normal. And we've always said, you know, there shouldn't be a separation between our everyday lives and the paranormal. And you walk the walk. You live that, which is incredible. It's great.
Well, and I'm thankful that you're providing a forum where you discuss this, because as you just said, to paraphrase that, the paranormal is really normal after all. And because when people hear the term paranormal, para meaning outside of the normal, the fact of the matter is that spirits are around us all the time. They make contact with us, whether or not we notice the subtle signs. We are directed into situations, and sometimes they'll even intervene on our behalf. And all too often, people just sort of dismiss it. I'm going to ask both of you and the audience this question as well. In the days before caller ID, and I know we all have caller ID now, but remember when the phone would ring and you would say, "Oh, that's Martha," and you'd answer it, and it was Martha.
Exactly.
Okay. Paranormal or normal? What do you think?
It's normal for us, and it should be for everybody.
You don't think about it as being that one step above or beyond. We just automatically thought that that's the way it was. Somebody coming down the drive, oh, I know who that is. Oh, yeah.
Exactly. And so with the advent of technology, and I'm going to paraphrase J.K. Rowling now, because in one of the Harry Potter books, Hermione said that Muggles invented technology because they don't have magic. And think about it, we have the internet, we have caller ID, we have Skype, the way we're doing this. And before we had a lot of these things, people would pay more attention to their feelings. It's like, wow, the phone's ringing. Maybe that's Martha. Or, something's going on with my kids. I don't know what it is, but something bad's going on with my kids. Or if somebody that you love died and all of a sudden you saw them or had a strong feeling about them and then later on found out. And these things are still happening to us. It's just that with all this technology that we take for granted now, we're tuning it out. And I think it's important to not tune that out and to tune into the vibration, the energy, the spirituality that's around us.
That's really great advice. And I think we all need to do that, not give our power over to technology. Technology is not going to solve all of our problems. It's something that supports our lives, but it's not our life. It shouldn't be anyways. And we need to get our power from within. And you've done that, and your whole family. I mean, you've got this amazing lineage. I mean, reading this book about your parents, my goodness. I mean, they were some kind of talented too. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was a real honor growing up in my family, because both of my parents had psychic and mediumistic abilities. And so as I started getting older, I began talking to them, well, who else in the family is like this? And I found out on my dad's side, his sister Marjorie, his mother Isabel, and his maternal grandmother Grace. On my mother's side of the family, she was really, really powerful as a medium and a psychic. And her grandmother, which would be my maternal great-grandmother, her name was Giovanna. In fact, on a PBS special, there was a two-part special. I think it came out last year. It was called The Italian Americans, and there was actually a section of it in part 2 about Giovanna, and they even they even referenced her psychic abilities there, and it was incredible to see that. So this has been going on in the family for quite some time, and so I've tracked it back to at least 1890 on both sides of the family. Now, I'm assuming it goes on further than that. And one of the things that I discuss in my latest book, Evidence of Eternity, is that psychic ability appears to be genetic. And there are several things which are, in other words, why do you look like your parents? It's because of genetics. Why does left-handedness run in some families? So there are certain traits, physical abilities, mental acuity, diseases run in certain families, certain types of cancers, and certain type of genetic anomalies. So why not psychic ability? And it appears to be a recessive trait. Now, a recessive trait means that it skips a couple generations. For example, in my family, especially on the Italian side, blue eyes, there are people with blue eyes, but it skips a few generations. So let's say you have all of a sudden two parents with blue eyes in a predominantly brown-eyed family, then the likelihood of one of the offspring having the blue eyes increases. And that's how I look at what happened with me, is that both of my parents had these recessive traits, and I tended to get the full package.
Wow. Yeah.
For that, we're grateful.
Yes, we are. That's right.
So, sometimes I am. I thank God every day. It's just that, and both of you understand this as well, because you have to put up with it too, is the people who refuse to believe, don't believe, or just like to be negative about it. And all I can say to those people is, I forgive you.
I like that.
Oh, you're so nice about it.
Yeah.
I'm not that nice about it. Are you?
Well, wait till they read your book about Evidence of Eternity. Once they read that book, I think that's going to change a lot more minds as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an excellent book, Mark.
Thank you.
It's a great book. And what's the point of dismissing all of this? Especially, and people really don't know what they're talking about, and they're just being dismissive. And there's no point in it. And they're really missing out on a fabulous part of life, in my opinion.
Definitely.
I've seen people, I don't believe that. And I'm a skeptic and I don't believe in it. I say, oh,
Right.
pardon me, I did not realize that you were the supreme pinnacle of intelligence in
Right.
existence. Please
Figured it
forgive
all
me.
out. Right. But here you are, also an Oxford-trained lawyer, God bless you, and yet you're able to meld these worlds together. You bring them together, and I'm sure you must face some criticisms there as well in the legal world when you go into the courtroom. Do you still face that, or have they just come to accept you?
Well, what's happening now is I'm not practicing law full time. I appear on shows like this and on shows like Coast to Coast and on television to discuss legal cases, particularly when the paranormal and the legal system collide. Like in the Slender Man stabbings, recently I did 2 shows on Darkness Radio about DNA evidence in the In Cold Blood murders. They exhumed the bodies of the 2 murderers to see if it could be linked to a similar murder of a family in Sarasota, Florida. In other words, the Clutter family, they were murdered in Kansas. Then a few days later, I think it was about a week later, the killers were spotted in Sarasota, Florida. The same day, another family of 4 was brutally murdered. And also with Jack the Ripper's there was some DNA found on one of the victims' dresses, and it was linked to the sister of the descendants of the sister of one of Jack the Ripper's the prime suspects, a guy named Aaron Kosminski. And then, of course, there's the "My house is haunted. Can I break the contract?" For sale, and ghost hunter liability, people falling down stairs, running around in a so-called haunted house doing paranormal investigations. So what we're seeing now with this huge spike in interest in spirit communication and the paranormal, of course, legal issues are going to come into it. So I've become the go-to guy there. But to answer your question, see, when you ask a lawyer what time it is, we tell you how to build a clock.
That's okay. That helps, especially when you want a clock.
Especially when you want a clock. But when I was practicing law, I did have to put up with a lot of snide comments and things like that. If you'll indulge me for one more story.
Please, go ahead.
It hit the news in a very big way that I was a psychic medium, and I had to be in this one judge's chambers. Now, I never really had a beef with the judge, but I always thought he was kind of an extremist, and I also didn't like that he was using his courtroom on Thursday afternoons during business hours to conduct fundamentalist Christian prayer meetings, which clearly is a violation of separation of church and state. And in front of a whole group of people, he said, well, I guess we don't need a probate division anymore because he can talk to the dead. And of course, everybody started laughing at me. And I'd had about enough at that point. And I said, I like your Christ, but I do not like you Christians because you do not act like your Christ. He says, how dare you say that? I said, well, actually, Gandhi said that. And Gandhi, Your Honor, was an attorney. And he goes, oh, well, let's just get on with it. Well, he continued being the way he was. And then a couple years ago, it made world news when this judge, and because they record all the court proceedings on camera, he got into an argument with a public defender and then got off the bench and physically beat the public defender up.
Oh my.
And it took an entire year for the Florida Supreme Court. I mean, to me, the guy should have been off the bench, eliminated from being a judge, I don't know, in about 3 days. But before the Florida Supreme Court made its decision, he sent me a text and he said, would you consider writing a letter of support on my behalf? So there I am. I'm looking at my cell phone and, oh, boy, did I want to write that letter. And then it was like, delete. I thought, I'm removing myself from this. I'm not getting caught up in this karma, and karma never loses an address because he was removed from the bench and is no longer a judge. So karma never loses an address.
I'll have to remember
Great
that.
line.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
love that. Isn't that great? Well, your life has been extremely colorful. You have so many experiences with people and trying to help them to bring something to closure, whether it is a passing through illness or a passing through murder. Because you've also helped to solve murders. I watched you on that doctor episode where you were trying to help the couple whose daughter had been horribly and tragically murdered. Did they ever find the murderer? Do you know? Is there an update on that case?
I know that the father took the information that I provided and gave it to, I believe it was the Phoenix police. So it's in Arizona. I don't know what they did with it, because in the cases that I've been consulted on by law enforcement, I get impressions, I get information, I get things which coincide with other things that they've uncovered. And what happens is, let's say a murder's committed, and then we watch these shows like CSI. A murder's committed, they get the forensic test results back later that day, and there's a conviction by the following Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move
everybody's
into the
happy.
world. Yeah, everybody's happy. Let's go into the land of reality now. All right, a murder's committed. It takes 6 to 8 months for the forensics to come back from the lab. I mean, the toxicology report on Carrie Fisher was just released a few weeks ago.
Yes, that's right.
So that's and talk about, she's a superstar, a famous person, and it still took almost months, almost 9 months for the toxicology report to be released. So these things take a real long time. So in the investigation phase, I can provide the police with information which can then put them on the track of finding additional information. So seldom in this work does X mark the spot.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes. We have wonderful stories in the book. And it's, but the thing that really got me, and PK and I were talking about this off the air, your poor Aunt Marjorie.
Right.
She paid a price that is beyond what anybody should ever pay for being psychic. Very sad to read that, I have to say. It was the saddest part of the book to me.
Well, considering it was her husband on top of everything else that would do that to her.
Her rotten husband. What the heck?
Yeah. I remember my mother never had anything kind to say about the husband, and for good reason. Mm-hmm. I don't really want to give away the details of the story.
No, you don't have to.
Because it was
a startling thing.
It was. But psychics and mediums have suffered greatly throughout the centuries. Even today, in many parts of the world, particularly in Muslim countries, being a psychic or a medium is punishable by death. And 2 years ago, Saudi Arabia had executed, they'd beheaded, I think, 133 people that year, a third of them for the crimes of sorcery.
Oh,
Interesting. And then, of course, in this country, you have the religious fanatics. They're not Christians. Christians are kind and loving and non-judgmental and emulate the teachings of Jesus. Religious fanatics say, well, I said the magic words that Jesus is my Lord and Savior, so now I get to practice anger, bigotry, hatred, and violence. And I don't mean to make fun of people with Southern accents. I mean, I went to law school not only in England, but also in Georgia, and it was funny because,
God. Did you go to Emory?
No, I went to Mercer University in Macon, Georgia. Fine school. And but it is a fine school, and they have a long tradition of producing quality trial attorneys. That's one of the reasons that I was attracted to it, because I always, wanted to be and was a trial attorney. I've tried over 300 jury trials, at least 1,000 bench trials, meaning that there was not a jury there. And then I don't even know how many motion hearings, but be that as it may, so my work now is focused on the spiritual, the demands for my services as a medium and as a public speaker and lecturer. I just concluded the tour of Arizona, where I was happy to meet Patricia Kirkman. And that was really nice because I was on the set of the Morning Blend TV show, which is in Tucson, and it's a wonderful show. And I absolutely love Tucson. And Patricia came backstage and said, I'm a regular on the show. They have me on doing the astrology, and I'd I'd like to meet you. And we talked, and she said, would you consider being on Supernatural Girls Radio? It's like, well, with a title like that, how could I possibly say no? So here we are.
You cannot say no. You cannot say no to PK. That's for sure.
It
That's
was a
great.
delight meeting you that day. And then that evening, we went to your talk at Unity, which was absolutely marvelous. Whenever you're anywhere, if people don't go, whoa, are they missing opportunities? Because how you connect with the souls of the people that are there and give them hope. Whew, wonderful.
Yeah.
It's interesting, because people ask me, is spirit communication scary or frightening? And I've never thought that it was. I mean, I started seeing spirits when I was around 3, and my parents. I remember Dad was like, "Ay, ay, ay," because his sister had been persecuted, and but my mom was all excited. It's funny, the Italian side of the family totally into it. Woo! The English side, go, "This is simply dreadful," So.
That's great. Hey, here's a quick question for you from the chat room. And by the way, everybody listening, if you'd like to send us a question, we will ask it on your behalf, and just go to irnchat.com. That's irnchat.com. Type in your question, we'll ask it for you. This is from Truth Seeker, Mark. He or she wants to know, do we get clues about the presence of a loved one who is passed that is in a room with us?
Absolutely.
What are the clues that we would get?
Absolutely. In both my books, Never Letting Go, I think you can see the cover in the back end, and Evidence of Eternity. In Never Letting Go, there's a chapter about recognizing the signs and how they reach out to us and how to observe that. And then I also go into that as well in Evidence of Eternity, explaining on the basis of science and quantum physics, is that spirits are around us all the time. And people, they start scoffing. And I say, well, what if I told you that you right now were surrounded by energetically charged particles filled with information, like radio waves? Okay. Turn on a radio. All right. Yep. And spirits are pure energy, so they're in the electromagnetic spectrum as well. And what happens is sometimes spirit communication is very blatant. Sometimes you will actually see the person, not in your mind's eye, but you will see them standing in front of you. But other times you may smell something, let's say a perfume that your mother wore, and there's no perfume bottle anywhere around. Or all of a sudden you are prompted to turn on the radio, and there's that song that just hits you right in the heart. Or out of your peripheral vision, you think you saw them. Okay. There are many ways that spirits communicate with us. It can be visual, it can be auditory, you can just feel them around, you can smell something. There is a wide array of how they communicate. So to answer Truth Seeker's question directly, absolutely yes.
Yeah, they're giving us these signals and signs all the time. So it's a matter of if we're paying attention or not. Right?
That's what I call spiritual situational awareness. In fact, in my second book, Evidence of Eternity, starts on 9/11, and I'm not going to go into the details of that too. But see, my dad was a Navy SEAL, and when I was a kid, he used to drive my brother and I crazy, and I'm glad that he did. Be aware. You've got to be aware of everything, And he always, because he was a Navy SEAL, and then he was a swimming instructor at the Y. So I knew how to swim by the time I was 2. All right. I mean, and I'll never forget, they took me to the YMCA and they threw me in a pool. Okay. And there was this German lady that taught the swimming lesson. She goes, swim or die. And I'm thinking, like, what, did she used to teach swimming lessons at Auschwitz? I mean, like, where did this lady learn her her skills with children, And the only thing missing was like Wagner playing in the background, which it probably was. And so I learned to swim because my options were limited. It was either swim or die. But of course they wouldn't let us die. But I was 2. I didn't know that. And so I learned how to swim. But Dad taught us that if we go to the beach, before you jump in the ocean, you scan the water, look for anomalies in the water that could be rocks or strange tides or currents. So I remember one time I was 15 years old and I walked down to the beach. It was during the summer, and it was one of those days where the ocean was real flat, because I live near the ocean, and there's all these people in the water, and all of a sudden I stopped dead in my tracks, because about 50 feet from shore and right between two groups of people that were swimming, I saw this huge dorsal fin come up, and it was right behind it was a smaller dorsal fin, and I could estimate it was about a 10-foot shark. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? So I very calmly, I go, everyone, get out of the water now. And they're all standing, staring at me going, why? All right, let me tell you something. When you're in the ocean and someone's like, get out of the water, don't sit there, why? Get out of the water. And I'm like, get out of the water, why? And then all of a sudden it comes up again. People start screaming, and it turns into that scene in Jaws where everyone's running out of the water, and now the shark's taken off because all the vibrations around it started making it nervous. So I'm running down the beach screaming, get out of the water, shark! You know, the people were running, and you know, but if I hadn't seen it, something horrible could have happened. And so the reason I bring that story up, aside from it was a traumatic event of my childhood, but at least I was on dry land, because I've been in the water with sharks, and it's much more fun being on dry land than being in the water with them.
Exactly. We're going to have to take a short break, everybody. So hang on and stay with us, because this show is amazing. You don't want to miss any of it. And we're going to take a short break. You are listening to Supernatural Girls Radio. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I am here with my beautiful co-host all the way from Tucson, Patricia Kirkman, PK. And if you need a numerological reading, that's the place to go, patriciakirkman.com. PK also offers classes, which are tremendous, very helpful in these trying times. So again, if you would like a personal reading or to sign up for a class, go to patriciakirkman.com. So we are speaking tonight with a tremendous guest, and all thanks to PK. We have met with and now have on the air with us Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer. He is the author of a new book called Evidence of Eternity. And we've got a few questions for you, quite a few questions. So we're going to ask a couple of them at least. Here's one. This is from Sherry T. How have you worked this gift into your profession?
Oh boy, we could spend the whole show just on that. I use it in...
Get to Old Navy. Tomorrow only, get 50% off all dresses and 50% off all men's and boys button-down shirts. That's right. All dresses and men's and boys button-downs are 50% off at Old Navy and OldNavy.com tomorrow. Valid 2/17, excludes in-store clearance.
In many different ways. And being psychic does not make me invulnerable or all-knowing or all-seeing, but it gives me impressions and insights into people, into situations. And I was, in my book, Never Letting Go, I talk about how I was conducting jury selection, and it was a crime of violence. In other words, my client was he was a big bruiser, and he got in a fight with another big bruiser. So it was two big guys beating each other up, and the loser filed charges, which is normally the case in barroom brawls. So on this, before the trial ever starts, there's jury selection. That's where each attorney gets to question the prospective jury panel to determine, if there's any biases or prejudice. And I kept getting tuned into this one lady, and I kept getting drawn to her, and then I started feeling a female spirit around her and this tightening in my throat. Now, what that indicates is that this woman had died from some type of obstruction or problem in the throat, and it started intensifying. And so I figured I'd ask her, pretty much a standard question in a criminal case. I said, have you or has anyone in your family ever been the victim of a violent crime? And she's looking at me and she's starting to tremble and shake. And I remember she held up her hands and tears just flowed out her eyes. And she said, a year ago, my sister was in a foreign country when an escaped mental patient strangled her, dismembered her body, and dumped her in the garbage like she was trash.
How awful.
So, I mean, I'm standing there in court, everyone's staring at me. I mean, you could hear a pin drop, and all I'm thinking is, in law school, they did not teach me how to deal with this. And I hear my client going, dude, what are you doing? And her sister spirit starts forming, and I've got literally one leg in each world. And if you want to find out what happens, you have to read Never Letting Go.
That's right.
They'll love it.
You have amazing stories in there. Now, and you raise an interesting question to me. What happens to these murderers, these people who do these horrific things? Because we've often talked about, I mean, let's face it, a lot of us would like to see them punished. A lot of us would like to know that they've passed over and they're burning in hell somewhere. But you're saying that doesn't happen. So what is your experience with these types of events and people? What happens to them?
Well, hell doesn't exist. And I know that Christians and Muslims are really in love with hell. They really want there to be a hell because all the people that they don't like are supposed to go there.
That's
and
right.
And what I've found in my work is that there are levels to the other side. And if you look at it, like the Hindus and Buddhists believe in several different levels to the afterlife. The Muslims actually have 7 different versions, or rather levels of paradise. The Mormons have 3 different, they have the celestial kingdom, the terrestrial, and the telestial kingdom on heaven. Now, Catholics, I was raised in the Catholic Church, we have heaven, purgatory, and hell. And purgatory is like this cosmic probation. So like if you're not really bad enough to go to hell or good enough to go to heaven, and so here's how we look at it, is that heaven is for Catholics and purgatory is for Protestants, and hell, well, that's for everybody else, you know. But but in my work as a medium, what I've seen is that there are several frequencies to the other side, just like there are frequencies on an AM or an FM radio dial. Also in the electromagnetic spectrum, you have different frequencies. You have X-rays, gamma rays, radio waves, microwaves, visible light. I mean, you could go on and on with the different frequencies. So that when people go to the other side, some go into what I would call a higher frequency, others would go into a lower frequency, and it's not a stagnant state. And apparently they can work themselves up and out of that. However, while there may not be hell, there is reincarnation. And if you think you're going to get away with something, our human system of justice is nothing compared to the law of balance. And the laws of physics teach us for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And let me tell you something, that applies to the laws of karma as well. So just because some killer may get away with it or think he or she has gotten away with it, think again. So that's why nobody gets away with anything. And if you look at all of the religions, they can all be summed up in 2 words: be nice. Okay? Be nice. Because if not, well, there are consequences. And so the human system of justice may be flawed, but the eternal system of justice, which is reincarnation, is not. But as far as the archetypal hell with the boogeyman and the pitchfork, that was created in the later Roman era, and then it really warped into the medieval mindset. And our current concept of hell is based on Dante's Inferno from 800 years ago. So that's why I don't get all bogged down in hell and demons and all that. There is no hell. Hell is here on earth. Humans have done a fantastic job of inflicting misery upon their fellow humans.
How unfortunately true. Yes.
Very sad. Very sad.
But we'd like to see you work. And I know I've got some texts from people that we'd like to see how you do what you do. And one of the things we discussed before the show was seeing if either one or both of our co-hosts in the past that actually died a couple of years ago would like to come forth and talk to us and our audience. One of them is Becky Andreasen, who we love dearly and we miss her so much. She was a very talented psychic medium herself, and she passed away from cancer.
Well, here's the thing. Hold on. The problem is my ability isn't like texting or instant messaging where I just ring somebody up. So why don't we just keep doing the show, and if somebody comes through, as opposed to get them here, get them now. Okay, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
It doesn't work that way.
That's fine.
And I'm not implying you're going to get them here, get them now. If people want to see how I work, definitely come to one of my events or go to my website, and you can watch where I'm doing this, before a crowd of people. Because a lot of times people say, well, I want you to get this person to come through, and they want to talk to Aunt Martha, and all of a sudden Cousin Bill comes through, and they're like, well, I don't talk to Cousin Bill, I want to talk to Aunt Martha. It's like, well, I'm not a bouncer, okay? And so
get who you're going to get.
Well, we'll see.
Right, I get who I'm going to get.
It doesn't work like a text message. We're quite well aware of that. But I did want to bring her name up, and then there was Helene Olson. There was also a race car driver who died, who we'd love to hear from as well.
Okay, you just violated the cardinal
rule.
Let
me do this.
It's all over my website and in my books. Don't tell me names, biographical data, anything about the people that you want to hear from. So now I know race car drivers. So anything about a race car I can't trust because it's already in my brain, and I don't know if it's being transmitted by the spirit or it's pre-existing information. So for anyone who wants to get a reading with me, when you fill out the form on the website, please do not launch into writing the New Testament about who you want to hear from, how your heart is broken, no bios, names, anything, nothing. And the reason for that is it's a quality control issue. Secondly, I want the information that's being transmitted by the spirit to be completely untainted by anything I know ahead of time, because I'm going to be getting impressions and things like that, and then I describe what I'm getting. So if I get either of these people, I'll let you know, but for right now, I'm going to take a pass on that because I already know too much about them.
Okay, so
let me ask you a question. I was going to ask a question. For when someone is contacting you to get a reading with you, how should they set their mindset to what they write you, and then that's it?
Okay, on my website, evidenceofeternity.com, there's a tab for scheduling a phone reading. Most of my readings are by the phone. And people, well, how can you do that? Well, hello, electromagnetic spectrum. Once again, and spirits are moving at the speed of light. So they zip back and forth between us, much like what we're doing right now is happening at the speed of light, which is 186,282 miles per second. But what people need to do is check your expectations at the door. No alcohol, no recreational drugs for at least 24 hours before. If you're on some type of prescription medication for anxiety, talk to your healthcare provider about cutting back on the dosage, because your brainwave frequency is just as important. The client brings the people into the reading. So you got three parties in a reading. You have me, I'm the radio. You have the client who draws them in. Then you have the spirits, which are zipping back and forth. And so people should be as relaxed as they can. It's normal to be nervous, but there's nothing to be afraid of. And also, it's very important just to be calm, just to be positive, but don't go so much like, I want this, if I need to hear this. I was doing a reading for one lady. She goes, well, there was a secret code that my son was going to give me, a secret code. All right, so she was flooding the atmosphere, the energetic environment with I want, which is a negative energy. And that's why you invite spirits in and you take that negative energy down. And I said, well, all I'm seeing is birds. No, he was supposed to show a feather. And I'm like, well, what are birds covered in? Well, that's not good enough. And then she just started like going off on me. And it's like, okay, well, yelling at the medium and getting angry at us and constantly interrupting and criticizing us doesn't help either. Okay, because when I try too hard, that never works. Now, why is that? This is a receptor thing. This is a right-brained emotional activity. The left brain is the logic, the science, the curiosity, which is a valuable tool, but we have to put that to the side. Allow the messages to come through. Don't hyper-analyze them the second they come in. Well, why would cousin Sydney come in? I didn't like cousin Sydney. Cousin Sydney didn't talk to me for 20 years. I don't understand, but you start doing that right away, and you're going to clog the
let it flow.
You let it flow, let it flow. Get all the information down, and then afterwards, then you can hyperanalyze.
Now,
So-
here's a question.
Wait a
I
second.
think
Is there an Andy or an Andrea connected with either of these people that you wanted to talk to, or with you? I'm getting like an Andy, Andrea. The reason being is I keep seeing a Raggedy Ann doll, like Raggedy Ann doll. So I'm just gonna leave that with you guys.
Okay.
If a Raggedy Ann doll makes sense in any way, let me know.
Okay, PK, think about that. And here's a really good question from Catherine, Mark. She's asking, why can't more of us communicate with our loved ones on the other side, even after trying hard to do so? What are we doing wrong?
You're not doing anything wrong. Mediums are born, they're not made. However, everyone is capable of a mediumistic experience, although not everyone is a medium. Like everybody can swim, but not everybody will be Michael Phelps. Everybody can do math, but not everyone's going to be Stephen Hawking. Everyone can play guitar, but they're not going to be, Eric Clapton or Slash or Jimmy Page or, Brad Paisley. So there will be signs, there will be contact, whether they come in your dreams or it's turning on the radio and hearing them. But this may not be a skill that you have, but always be open to the signs. And if a sign comes in and you think, gee, was that my mom? Instead of immediately cross-examining it, well, probably not, it was my imagination, it's wishful thinking. Don't do that. Recognize it. Give yourself permission to have the experience and feel it. That's what you do. And if you try too hard, it never works.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And here's another good question. This is from Gretchen, who would like to know, how would you describe the last few minutes after we pass?
Well, based on my own experience, having had a near-death experience, and based on the NDE near-death experience studies that I've engaged in and studied, what happens is, here's what spirits tell me. I know all boys, all the guys that are listening have done this, and some of the girls, usually if you have an older brother who held you down and got a 9-volt battery and stuck it on your tongue, that tingling sensation. Spirits tell me it kind of feels like that when you leave your body. It's like this, and it's this like tingly sensation. It doesn't really hurt, but what happens is the quantum electromagnetic field, which is in your brain, the electrical field in your brain, which you and I would call a spirit or a soul. So think of your brain as a computer hard drive, and all of a sudden the hard drive crashes, but that information gets uploaded. So there's like the zip, and there is a feeling of euphoria, a feeling of going through the tunnel, and then you will start encountering people that you know who have died, and sometimes people that you don't know but are aware of. In other words, like great-grandparents and all of that. And so what happens in the near-death experience is that there's the euphoric feeling, the tunnel, there will be a life review. You start reviewing like moments throughout your entire life, and it goes by really quickly. And then here's the fascinating part is you're going from a finite perception, because our human brain is designed to perceive things in a limited fashion. And when you transition back to an infinite being, there is a mutation, if you will, from a finite perception to an infinite perception. And so you see loved ones, and then the light intensifies, and you feel this pervasive love and understanding. And even the word God is too limiting, but people talk about this being God. Now, here's where the near-deathers come back. And when I talk to spirits, they talk about what it's like to go beyond that point and how wonderful it is. Now, I always have to be careful when we describe how wonderful it is on the other side. Because admittedly, there may be people listening to this show who are suicidal or who are in a severe state of depression. Yes, the other side's wonderful, but suicide is not an option for you, nor should you consider it. And if you feel that you're isolated, alone, and depressed, 24/7 worldwide, there are suicide hotlines with trained professionals that will listen to you, that do care, and that will and can do and will help you. So that's why I'm always very, very careful about saying that, because
Makes good sense.
well, suicide touches all of us. My best friend committed suicide. I have a cousin that I believe committed suicide. Well, in fact, I know he did, but the official story is not. And it's an incredibly painful thing, and you don't want to do that to other people. Also, there are karmic ramifications. I was at an afterlife conference once, and there was this woman going around with a black mirror convincing or trying to convince people, mothers who had lost children to suicide, that their child was in hell. Let me tell you, I almost took that black mirror and rammed it down her throat. And I took those people and I said, this is primitive, superstitious nonsense. And do not listen to that garbage. Okay, there's no one size fits all for suicides. The reason that religions come down so heavily on it is because it's so painful to so many people. They want to discourage you. And so while their intention is good by saying, well, if you do this, some horrible thing will happen to your soul, the effect of what it does to the family of the person who's committed suicide is absolutely horrible. So anyway, I don't want to get off entirely on that, but it's always important to let people know that, yes, the other side's wonderful, it's pure energy, and we're all going to get there, so don't be in a rush.
That's right.
Good advice. Very good advice. Yes. Now, here's another question. What do you do to prepare for a reading? This is from Klaatu.
I pray and meditate. And I try to relax, clear my mind. What I do is I envision a beam of white light going throughout my entire body, and I say to myself, I'm a clear channel for God's peace, love, and light. And I meditate, and then I pray, and I ask God to send forth spirits for the highest of purposes to bring messages of love, healing, and resolution to the person I'm doing the reading for. And then, when I start the reading, I always begin with a prayer, and then I just open up to frequency and put it in God's hands.
Okay. Well, it's a process.
More than that, that's fabulous.
Yes. So now we have so many questions, but
that's fine.
Gosh.
I'm sorry, but I keep getting Andy. Is there an Andy that's connected to either one of you? And I don't mean to keep beating it till I get a hit, but I keep getting Andy. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, if any of the people in the chat room have an Andy.
They'll speak up, yeah. I'm sure. Yes, and we'll let you know. Andy's not ringing a bell, but who knows? Are there any psychics? This is from Dark Knight, wants to know. Are there any psychics in the industry that you are personally in awe of?
Not really, and I don't mean that. I don't mean that in a egoistic or in a negative way, because I've met pretty much everybody. I respect them. I think I would have been in awe of meeting Edgar Casey. I think Edgar Casey or Nostradamus. Okay, they're kind of they're kind of the rock stars in the psychic legacy. But I've met a number of the quote unquote famous psychics, and it's great to meet them. And it's actually fun sitting and talking to other high profile mediums, or even mediums that aren't as high profile, simply because there's things we have in common that are fun to talk about. What I remember I was in England with a group of my friends who are mediums, and we were on a train, and we were all talking shop, and then we realized we're looking around, everyone they're all like straining to listen to us, and some people look horrified, and there's this elderly gentleman, he goes, "You all talk to dead people then?"
They must have thought they were on the train to Hogwarts with you.
Well, yeah, those comments are going there too. And
Well, listen, for everybody, we're going to take another short break. But in the meantime, please feel free to type up your questions in the chat room. And that is in IRNchat.com. That's IRNchat.com. As usual, you all have wonderful questions. We're happy to ask Mark on your behalf. And we have still so much more to cover. Great book written by Mark, actually 2 books, Evidence of Eternity and Never Letting Go. So these are some terrific books with some heartwarming stories, and you need to get both of them. They're excellent, excellent books. Again, we're speaking with Mark Anthony tonight, the psychic lawyer, and you are listening to Supernatural Girls Radio. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I am here with my co-host, PK, and our amazing guest tonight, Mark Anthony, the author of 2 great books, Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity. And we just figured out something on the break. I'm going to let PK, you and Mark tell everybody what you discovered about that name, Andy, that kept coming back and haunting Mark. What was it?
Well, my Aunt Ann used to call me Raggedy Andy because I was always into the garden, into the chicken coop, into the things around the property, because that was my whole world. And I was back and forth, and I always looked like I was pulled through a mud puddle half the time because I was always, that was the way it was. And I never thought about it. And I had a doll upstairs, a couple of dolls. My aunt collected dolls. She collected charms. She collected anything that could move. I mean, it was terrible.
Yeah, so we found out what the Andy made and the Raggedy Andy. And then I said, "Do you still use fountain pens?" And what did you say?
Yeah, a few.
It's funny because that's how a spirit can let you know that they're around you and aware of what's happening. They can bring up medical, personal, financial things. And so she's talking about fountain pens. I mean, pretty much, I don't think too many people use fountain pens now.
Not anymore.
And so PK is verified that she still uses fountain pens on occasion. So basically, she wanted to pop in and say hello. And then I got a hit on the month of June and a string of pearls being the birthstone for the month of June. And PK, I think you said that's when you believe that she passed, but we can't.
That was the month she passed away.
Yeah, so we can't verify that just yet. What about the string of pearls? And look, I know every lady likes pearls and has strings of pearls. All right, I get that.
We do.
But I don't bring something up unless I get it. What's anything with pearls?
Well, she loved trinkets. She loved all kinds of things. And if you had it, she wanted it. Not one of she had 5 brothers, and their wives, they'd come to visit. And when they left, whatever they had with them, that she managed to get off of them because she just kind of liked good stuff. She would talk them into giving it to her, donating it to her, or making them feel guilty if they didn't leave it.
I'm going to segue over to the host. Was it Rebecca who had passed?
Yes.
Was there anything with her in the month of June that you can recall, birth, death, anniversary, or event with her? And the other thing that I'm getting, and I believe this to be her, is I'm feeling with her passing. And other than, that you told me what her name was, I don't know anything about her, but I feel like I'm drowning in my own fluids. So it feels like there's this massive fluid buildup in the chest, and I get this nauseated sensation, which would indicate difficulty eating or holding down food prior to passing.
That is
makes
true.
sense? Okay.
Yes, that is true.
I hate to ask, but she's walking around with a toilet plunger. Did one of you guys have some plumbing issues recently?
No plumbing issues here, thank God. How about you, PK?
Well, the thing for the commode, kept falling off the chain, so you couldn't, when you flush it, and the water kept running, and I didn't realize that there was a plunger missing.
A plunger missing. Okay.
Yeah,
so Rebecca's popping in and she's letting you know that she knows and see what she would like us all to know. This is interesting. I know, like, when people see crows or ravens, they get all bent out of shape, but she's showing me like a flock of crows flying over, and it does not feel like something negative at all. Do crows, blackbirds, ravens make sense to you in any way?
Yes. Yes.
In what way?
They're very intelligent animals, they're very intelligent birds, and they always have a message when they gather together. I know there's a name for it too, when they flock together like that. And Becky was very tuned in to animals, all animals. She loved them, and she was very tuned into them.
What's fascinating is she's holding up an hourglass, okay? An hourglass. And she's also talking to Patricia about your sense of justice. She says that you feel there's something about I guess maybe because I'm an attorney, she's bringing this up, that there's something about our system of justice, or that you have been denied justice. Does this make any sense to you?
Well, I certainly feel that way.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we all could to some extent, but in what way?
Gosh, I'd really have to give that some thought, but I think Becky is onto something. Exactly what that is, I'm not sure, but I do have a strong sense of justice. Okay. And I do have a strong sense of how people should be treated, especially people like you, Mark, and PK, and all of us that we know that have these abilities. I have a strong sense of justice for all of us abductees also, I feel, have been horribly abused by our culture and our government. So I do have a strong sense of justice for all of that. And maybe
Patricia,
that's part of the message.
What about the taxation thing that you've been going through in your community?
Yeah, that's a big nightmare.
Yeah.
And now the hourglass, it could be an actual hourglass, or something about time is of the essence in connection with the justice message.
It could be that something is about, maybe time is running out, or something's about to come to fruition. I hope it's not running out.
Okay. She says, stop thinking that everything's on a wing and a prayer. Okay. In other words, she's telling you to have more faith, and don't think that you're running on a wing and a prayer, that you're actually on very solid ground. And she said the ice is not as thin as you think it is. So apparently whatever you're doing is ruffling some feathers, and she says that you're on a stronger position than you think.
Well, that's great. And it's funny you should say this about faith. Becky had a lot of faith, and I learned from her when she was alive about faith. She really was a master of that in many ways. God bless her.
Well, super. Well, there you go. We got a brief but fun message from her, and from your
that was her. There's no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt that
Ann.
Okay. Your Aunt Ann with the Raggedy Andy nickname for you. Oh my God, how cute is that? Yeah.
Well, for and I don't know if there's a question like this in the chat room, but a lot of people, when they talk about spirit communication, you have to realize it's not texting or instant messaging, and you have to the subtle messages that come to you. Like I saw a Raggedy Ann I think I said Raggedy Andy doll, and it's like, that's not something I think about. Okay. No. And it's like, and it kept coming back. So then that's the spirit, because I'm getting the persistence. So spirit communication can be very subtle. It's heavily based on symbols and metaphor. So you have to start getting.
Get to Old Navy. Tomorrow only, get 50% off all dresses and 50% off all men's and boys button-down shirts. That's right. All dresses and men's and boys button-downs are 50% off at Old Navy and OldNavy.com tomorrow. Valid 2/17, excludes in-store clearance.
Used to the metaphors and the symbols. and trust.
But how do you sort it out, Mark? Like when you do a group, because I know you do a lot of group readings and things, and it's like right now in the chat room, there's another message, and this is from Big Bird, and they're saying, "Sorry, my brother Andy passed." So again, you're going to have a crossover here. He kind of freaked me out there, meaning you freaked her out or him out. That's weird because my brother and I. We're also Raggedy Ann and Andy. This chat person's first name is Ann, by the way.
Okay.
So how do you sort that out?
This is called the collective consciousness communication. This is a concept I'm refining and developing for my next book. And I also talk about multiple meaning messages in Evidence of Eternity, where one message can have more than one level of significance. I want to ask the person in the chat room if her brother died traumatically. And the reason I'm saying this is because the person I believe to be Andy, I'm feeling this impact sensation to my head. And an impact sensation to the head could indicate head trauma, but it could also be a stroke aneurysm. But I'm getting like my teeth in my jaw feel like they're shattering. So does that make any sense? Because the person.
So Big Bird, if you could respond to that with Mark talking about that type of a passing. Is this how your brother Andy passed? Would you please respond in the chat room so that we can see your answer, and we'll continue the conversation once you do respond. Yeah, I would think it's kind of tough sometimes to sort these things out to see what message belongs to which person in the group.
Well, you keep getting the facts and the evidence until you narrow it down to one person, or it can be what happens with the collective consciousness communication is that a group of spirits will come in tandem. Maybe there will be like a group of people who committed suicide, and the reason that they're all coming in is because they have similar messages for the people coping with their deaths. Okay, so there could be something why I got the Ann and Raggedy Andy messages coming in tandem. Okay, certainly it was for PK, but also it could be for this person in the chat room as well.
Yeah, it's so fascinating that happens. Go ahead, PK.
I was going to say, when you were giving your talk at Unity here, one of the things you said, you were talking about a very young man, a young Marine. And because my husband was a Marine, and you said passed away quite abruptly. He did at 37. And then you said, but from a shot in the head. And then that changed the dimension from what I was thinking to the rest of the room. So you're so pointed with everything that comes out that you narrow it down. It isn't like saying, is there a Susie in the audience? You know,
right. It's like you look at a crowd of 500 people. Someone have a son who died whose name started with J.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Well.
Yeah.
You're going to get something and say, well, I may say I'm getting a male, I'm getting a J name, but I'm getting an impact here. I'm getting this, and this, and it's the evidence. That's what evidential mediumship is. Right. I mean, everybody has a grandmother who loved them and who baked cookies. Okay.
Right.
I mean, everybody's grandmother, baked cookies and they love you, But when you start getting into what they died from, what they look like, physical characteristics, likes, dislikes, personality profile, dates, that's evidential mediumship. So.
Right. Now, what about negative spirits when you go to do it, when you've gone to do so many readings as you have, I'm sure thousands over the years. Have you ever encountered anything like that?
Zero.
Wow.
Zero. And I know there's a lot of mediums that get into the boogeyman theory and the demons and all this. We have to realize that in the spirit realm, in the purely energetic realm, there's a lot of entities that are non-human spiritual intelligence. This does not mean they're devils and demons and no my. I mean, that's all that medieval nonsense that it just gives me a headache. But there are spirits that are not necessarily aligned with or really even interested in human beings, but their frequencies will overlap. But in the readings that I do, I get, for the most part, human spirits. On occasion, a few angelic entities will pop in, because angels were never humans. Humans will never become angels. It's a separate species. Not to be flippant, but for people who like Lord of the Rings, think of angels as elves and people as people. And angels and elves can get along just fine, but angels sort of have their special stuff. That's one of the best ways I can analogize it. But I never get negative spirits because that's not what I do. I ask God to send forth spirits for the highest of purposes to bring messages of love, healing, and resolution. And we don't want to wallow in lower frequencies. It's all about elevating our vibration to a higher frequency, and also spirits reaching out to people here to help them, because they know what you're going through. They know how miserable and unhappy or filled with pain that you are, and they don't want you to feel that way. That's why spirits do intervene and do connect with us. And people say, but I'm holding them back. Well, I used to think that. Oh, well, we're holding them back. No, that's a misinterpretation. We're holding ourselves back because we cannot hold back energy. We can't. And what you have to think about is that life is everlasting. Think about a star that burns out, yet it may be 1 million, 2 million light years away, yet we're still seeing the light of it. Because when the star burns out, the energy of the beam of light continues eternally. That's our soul. It continues eternally, even though the vessel that it was anchored to is no longer functioning.
Wow. Okay, well, that's a great explanation of a lot of things, all wrapped up into one. So that's terrific. So, PK, do you have any other questions for Mr. Mark?
I'm always in amazement, and even more so after I read your 2 books. I just can't say enough about that. In fact, I was like a kid in a candy store all day waiting for you to get on.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's so much to this world of mediumship. And you also studied this in England, but you have a natural ability, and as you inherited this, I imagine. But here's another question, because there are a lot of abductee situations out there and stories. Have you encountered, when you do readings for people who have been abducted, any kind of ET communication?
Oh, yeah. I've done readings for a couple people that claim to be abductees, and wow, the stuff that comes through is definitely different.
Is it?
And,
okay.
Yeah, definitely different. I was in Denver a couple years ago, and there was this young guy there, and he kind of looked like Tom Cruise from Top Gun. Okay, he had the crystal blue eyes, the square jaw. I mean, it's like the perfect male specimen. Okay, and he stood up, and I was drawn to him because his grandfather's spirit came in, and then I made some reference about a UFO, and then I said the Greys. And this kid started freaking out, going, that's who abducts me. And then this whole thing started to come forward that there was something about him physically that they were interested in, about how he metabolized protein. And there was all this stuff. And, and then afterwards, it's like a couple of us were talking about him, and to him, and we're saying, well, clearly you're in tip-top physical condition, and you are of interest to them for various reasons. But what was fascinating is that the message was he needed to change his biochemistry. And so the message was, and I get a lot of this, the other side's very concerned with the acidic content of people's bodies here. And we know that cancer thrives in acid, as do infections, and by alkalizing a diet. And they said specifically to this kid, if his grandfather's spirit, if you start alkalizing, you're going to become less interesting to them. Now, I haven't seen him since, but I'm certainly hoping that helped, because I know I've talked to people from MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, and these are not, geeks. These were really smart geeks. No, a lot of these guys were scientists. They had worked with NASA. Very intelligent people, and I've always believed that it's arrogant, if not ignorant, to think that we're alone in the universe or the multiverses. And the way I look at aliens is, why would they contact us in a big way? If they're observing us, we're a violent species, We make war upon ourselves. We pollute and destroy our own planet. We're inhumane to each other. And they know that if they give us any technology, the first thing we're going to do is figure out how to make a weapon out of it, because that's human nature. And people say, oh, that's hogwash. But look at like the Mayans and the Aztecs. When the Spanish arrived, okay, the technological disparity, let's say the Aztecs had achieved a level of technology that the Roman Empire had, which was 1,000 years plus behind the Spaniards, who had steel weapons, they had gunpowder, and they had plate armor. They came down with a technological disparity. And then, of course, they also spread diseases unintentionally, but even more effective. And the native populations were completely, defenseless.
Right.
Okay, so hopefully that if we are being studied by aliens, I'm hoping they're the Vulcans as opposed to the Klingons, So, and, even recently, Stephen Hawking, I love Stephen Hawking, and even though he claims he doesn't believe in an afterlife, I have another story on that too, but he said, we must be careful about contacting aliens because you don't know what's out there. And we very well might be like, sending a message out to the Klingons or the Borg or, Darth Vader and the Empire. We're all assuming that on these other planets, the good guys won. Well, maybe on some other planet, the Nazis won, or, the extremists and all that. And we have to be careful about just sending these beacons out to these other civilizations.
You had said something at that talk about putting a pinch of baking soda to help.
Yes. With alkalizing, it's very easy to alkalize. Okay, see a bottle of water, bottle of water. Take a pinch, little tiny pinch of baking soda, drop it in the water. Okay, you have now created alkalized water. Or you can buy these alkalized waters from exotic tropical islands that are like $4 or $5 a bottle. Or you can get the, because when I was in the Yucatan, I led a group of people on what was called the Mystical Mayan Tour. It's something I do under my Psychic Explorer brand. And we go to spiritual sites throughout the world and study the mysticism, and we do readings and stuff, and it's a lot of fun. But what we found is that there were doctors from all over the world in this part of the Yucatan studying the people there because they don't get cancer. And it appears that the Yucatan sits atop a tremendous chunk of limestone, and when it rains, and it's a rainforest, it takes a century for the water to seep through the limestone into the aquifer. So limestone is alkalized. So the people in the Yucatan are drinking alkalized water. In fact, that's where all the cruise ships fill up on. Like people say, don't drink the water in Mexico. Well, that may be true in Mexico City and along the Tex-Mex border, but not in the Yucatan. It's some of the cleanest water in the world. And so alkalizing our diet, and I'll wrap this up. I get these messages a lot from the other side. We live in a society that sugar, corn syrup is in everything. People talk about, the only thing I like to drink is Coca is sodas. Okay, I don't want to trash anybody, but you keep ingesting acid and corn syrup. Sugar turns into acid. Guess what cancer feeds on? Sugar. Yeah. So the other side is telling us start alkalizing, and it's a lot easier than you think it is.
No, that's great advice. Yeah. And is that going to be your next book where you get health tips from the other side?
I get a lot of medical information. My next book is going to be dealing more with the how spirits interject themselves in our lives on a daily basis, and how but It will be driven by action-packed stories, because the worst thing is sitting down and having to read a book that feels like you're reading an algebra textbook. Okay. And well, I mean, so many people say, oh, you've got to read this book, and I start reading, it's like, oh, and there's, and in fact, Patricia and I were talking, and we won't name them, but there's a couple books out that people are like, oh, you've got to read this. And I read it, and it's like, that's horrible. I mean, it reminded me of when I was in law school, sitting through federal basic income taxation.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time I was in tax law class, and I couldn't handle it. I mean, my brain was just about to explode. I couldn't, and I went to the law library, and I was sitting there, and I saw this book, and it was a biography about one of my favorite judges. He was a New York appellate judge. His name was Learned Hand. Talk about a pompous name. Perfect name for a judge, Learned Hand. And he was one of the great intellectuals in American jurisprudence. And here's, talk about synchronicity. I opened the book, and it goes right to this page where Learned Hand was writing about the federal income tax code. And he said, the words dance before my eyes in a meaningless procession of cross references and exceptions. And I started laughing, going, all right, I feel better. If one of the smartest judges this country's ever produced couldn't stand the IRS code, well, then I feel good. So
you shouldn't feel bad. That's right. That's great.
Definitely.
Well, unfortunately, Mark, we've come to the end of this incredible show.
Gosh.
We've loved every single minute of it with you. And people, you can find Mark at evidenceofeternity.com. You will find videos there, more information about his books, how to get a hold of him for readings. So don't hesitate to contact Mark there. And again, Evidence of Eternity and Never Letting Go, 2 great books for you to read. And Mark, we got to have you back. This was just too much fun.
It's fun.
Definitely.
It's been great.
Thank you. This has been great. God bless you.
God bless you too. And next week, everybody,
Take good
we'll
care,
be
Mike.
back. And we are going to have another show. This is on Glamour Magic. We are coming into spooky October, everybody. So join us again next week. Until then, we'll see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
You've reached the High Fashion Hotline.
Hi, my husband and kids just gave me an executive order. Stylish new outfits now. Where do I go?
Get to Old Navy.
Old Navy.
Yep, get up to 50% off store-wide during Old Navy's big President's Day sale.
Up to 50% off store-wide. I won't veto that.
Old Navy's fashion-forward jeans start at just $15 for adults, $10 for kids. And colorful fleece starts at just $15 for adults, $12 for kids at Old Navy and OldNavy.com. But hurry, the sale ends soon.
Well, just call me Shopper in Chief. We're going to Old Navy now.
High fashion, Old Navy. Valid 2/12 through 2/20. Select styles only.